All right, hello. Welcome back. Chase Thomas Podcast. Taping this on a Tuesday evening. First timer from Jackets Online. It's Kelly Quinlan. Kelly, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I got something for you.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. I had one of those. I lost it in the Hartsfield-Jackson airport because I left it in my bag. And I was flying out of town the next week for an away game. And I had to just leave it at the TSA checkpoint. So...
That's tough. It's my late grandfather's. He went to Tech, and actually, this is a good segue, Kelly. Last name Dodd, diehard Georgia Tech fan.
There you go.
But for some reason, Georgia Tech wants to change Bobby Dodd Stadium. Kelly, what is happening here? Is it going to be Hyundai? Is it going to be Lexus of Atlanta also at Bobby Dodd Stadium at the Flats? Are they going to try and do this weird combination thing? Like, what is actually true, and what are you hearing on the naming rights front here?
So they've been looking for basically revenue sources. They've had a rough few years with obviously COVID impacting kind of everybody in terms of their bottom lines. And then the lovely Geoff Collins experiment that sapped away a chunk of attendance for football, the main revenue sport. And they're paying him between $7 and $12 million to go away, depending on how you interpret his contract and what's going on there. So, they've just been in a tight spot. They fired the AD, Todd Stansberry. Finances have been always kind of an issue. Georgia Tech, they have a lot of debt, and they just need to find some new ways to raise money. This is a easy one because it really involves very little other than putting some signage up on the stadium and irritating certain parts of the fan base a little bit. But it's free money, right? Like if you're getting $1 million to $3 million to put some branding on your stadium that you don't even really have to pay for, it seems like easy money at a time where they could use a cash injection until they get on their feet with football and men's basketball for that matter. So
do you think it happens ultimately?
Yeah. I mean, I heard about this a while ago, and I wasn't sure exactly what the deal was. I had kind of caught wind that something was going down and just kind of forgot about it. And then I think around July 1st was when it was supposed to be like announced, and it's been pushed back a little bit. But my understanding is like it got leaked for a reason to AJC. So I think it was a way of getting it out there, and so people wouldn't be so surprised when there's a formal announcement very soon.
Who do you think it's going to be? Do you know?
Hyundai.
Is it so? It is going to be Hyundai.
Yeah, and it makes sense. They're opening a giant plant down in the Savannah area. They're trying to get more involved. They own part of Kia. Kia has a huge plant in
Columbus, right? In
the Columbus area. Yep. And so it's kind of surprising. I think people don't understand some of these deals. Like everyone's like, why isn't it Porsche or BMW or Ford or whatever? It's about people who are trying to build their brand or whatever. And it's part of a larger project with Georgia Tech, as I understand it, in terms of they're wanting to have a presence on campus. There's a thing called Tech Square on Tech's campus that has all these Fortune 500 companies, and everyone's trying to kind of tap into the student body and build kind of that bridge. And I think this is one way they can do it. The school president was involved in all of this. So I think that it's a cool deal. They need money. It's right now. Yeah. Think about it too, with NIL coming up. Everyone's kind of changing how they're funneling their money, right? Like, and it's going more towards people wanting to support that as a direct thing and maybe not donate as much. So you have a lot of different, you can't really necessarily hit up your base for money again. And they've done a lot, right? Because everyone was out raising money during COVID. They just did a competitive drive initiative where they were funding scholarships. So there's three sort of main budget issues, and two of them were, the debt service for Georgia Tech, and then the second one is scholarships. That's something people don't think about, is the cost of attendance and those things, and it's not free. So you're paying $10, $12 million or whatever it was a year towards scholarships. They've been able to eat away at that too. So all of that creates more free money for them to invest back into the product. The budget keeps getting bigger every single year. It's gone up almost $20 million in the last 3 years. So, the money's got to come from somewhere. It's not just coming from the ACC network. That hasn't been the financial windfall that maybe people expected.
Interesting. When you look at Brent Key and what's already changed from the time Geoff Collins was roaming the sidelines in July of last year to now, what have you noticed is the biggest difference between this being Brent Key's program versus Geoff Collins' program?
There's very little artifice, very little, you know, coddling of people. There's not music at practice. Like every day they had a DJ when Geoff Collins was a coach, whether it was an actual DJ early on and later they had someone on the staff assigned to play DJ every day. And they had theme days, you know, Techno Tuesday, I think it was, or Techno Third, one of those. Like every day there was like music every day, all during practice. Right. And it was sort of this, it wasn't very professional would be the way that I could nicely say it. That was how it was. Brent Key's all about work. Brent Key played for George O'Leary, coached under him, worked for Nick Saban at Alabama for many years. He's not suffering fools. He's an O-line coach. Those guys are not going to be into doing hip, cool stuff. They want to play football. And Brent Key's philosophy is if it doesn't help win football games, I'm not super interested in it unless it's like involving the kids and, you know, them needing something or whatever. But outside of that, he really just wants to coach ball. And that's the opposite. I mean, Geoff Collins had a clothing line, for crying out loud, that he tried to launch. Like,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the 404 denim line. It's a notorious joke on our website that we bring up all the time. When they were talking about naming the stadium, a joke that they could use that. The proceeds from that could be used to pay for, instead of, you know, giving the naming rights away from the stadium. But yeah, and there's all these like harebrained schemes and like different things, and there just was no winning, so you can't really create any buzz in the city. They had a little bit of buzz the first year, and then it kind of died away. And so, yeah, Brent's just about coaching ball. He wants to win football games. He wants to make a tough team, and instilling that and having very little time for shenanigans.
Who leads quarterback one? Is it Haynes King? Is it somebody else? Like, I think a lot of people probably assumed it was going to be Haynes King.
So this is one of my favorite things that's been going on for the last 6 months. Haynes King came from Texas A&M, right? Zach Pyron was the starting quarterback at the end of last season before he got hurt in the Miami game, knocked out for the year. Zach Pyron was a higher-rated recruit. They're 1 year apart out of high school. And somehow that's turned into Haynes King should be handed this job. And it's Zach Pyron's team right now. And he would be QB1. Now, is there going to be a competition? Yeah. Haynes King would be the first to tell you that he was not put in a position he feels like to be successful by Jimbo Fisher, and was not developed in the way that he would like to have been. As a coach's kid, he's got work to do. Like, it is, if Zach Pyron has a little bit of a lead in the clubhouse right now. Now, could that change in fall camp? I guess. I would say that, you know, Pyron showed in his games last year that he was really capable of leading this team. And so they got to beat him out at this point. That's where it's at. And all of the media seem to be really fascinated with this idea that, oh, they got all these guys from Texas A&M and they're going to walk in and start, or the guys from Georgia or Alabama or whatever. That's not really the case. You got to earn it. And so, you know, do I think Dominique Blaylock will start at wide receiver, the kid they got from Georgia? Yeah, probably. But, you know, Chase Lane maybe from A&M. I don't know that Haynes King will start. I don't know that Andre White, the linebacker they got from A&M, will be the starting linebacker at the end of the season. So there's a lot of expectations when you could take transfers, and people automatically assume that A&M was this great program, and they've had talent. But if you kind of look around and dig into it a little bit, like Haynes King really struggled when he was playing quarterback. I watched him play a game against Sam Houston State, who was not very good, and struggled horribly. He was playing against, the whole reason I watched the game was, it was, I think, one of the first games that Jordan Yates, the former Georgia Tech quarterback, was playing. I was home that day, and I decided to watch the game because I wanted to see how Jordan did. And it was like a battle of attrition between the two of them, like, because Jordan was struggling because A&M had a good defense, and Haynes King was struggling because the offense was so bad at A&M. So, you know, I just feel like it's going to be a slow burn to see kind of who wins that job. And I'm very much against this idea that like someone's just going to walk in with Brent Key and have a job. And that's certainly not been the way that quarterbacks coach Chris Winkie, who's also the co-offensive coordinator, approaches all of this. He's very close to Zach and very close to Haynes, and he wants them to compete, and the best guy wins the job.
Well, you mentioned Chris. So when you look at Chris, because
obviously you guys know a lot about him, yeah.
I mean, we do know a lot about Chris Winkie. I also know a lot about Buster Faulkner because I'm a Parkview alum,
wow.
Kelly. So I've known about Buster Faulkner for a very long time. And now he is co-offensive coordinator with Chris Winkie. Who's calling plays? Has that been decided?
Buster's the offensive coordinator. And there's always like a guy that whether it's Tony Elliott at Clemson or whatever, there's these co-coordinator situations, usually one guy. So Buster's calling the offense and Andrew Thacker's calling the defense, even though they have co-court because they have Kevin Shearer, who you also know as the co-DC and linebackers coach. So those are the two play callers are Buster and Andrew Thacker, who's been the defensive coordinator for a minute at Georgia Tech.
Well, I think that's also the part of the reason that people aren't handing Zach Pyron the job, right? Is because it's going to be a little bit different than what they were running last year, right? Like there's going to be some differences here, and have you already seen some early changes, and what has Buster kind of tipped his hand on, like what's going to look different about Georgia Tech offensively than what we've seen the last couple of years under Geoff Collins?
So I think it makes a little more sense, actually. They were really geared towards Jeff Sims and his ability to run the last few years and running a lot of trying to run read option, trying to run stuff to get him isolated in space, and then using the running backs that they had a decent stable of that are now in the NFL. And this is more about getting guys in space and getting them the ball, whether it's Christian Leary, the kid they got from Alabama, or Malik Rutherford. Those are your two slot guys. Dominic Blaylock, Leo Blackburn.
The whole receiver room's different. Like when you go through in the manual, sure, I'm just this is all different. I don't even know. Like Georgia Tech is just going to have a whole new wide receiver room. Everybody's new.
So Leo Blackburn, who was probably their best receiver, missed most of last year with a wrist injury and torn his ACL, tore his other ACL in the spring, and he might be back. You can't necessarily count on him. They lost all of their main outside receivers and slot guys that were other than Malik Rutherford. So they have 3 transfers. Their older kids have come into the program. Abdul Janae, who's a kid from Duquesne, who's a big-bodied wide receiver. Dominic Blaylock from Georgia, who was playing a lot there and had some injury problems in the past. And then Chase Lane, who's a kid from A&M that had played well there and just kind of suffered from the mediocre offense there. Those 3 guys jump in. They have several younger guys. DJ Moore's one that's going to play a lot. And then the slot, Malik Rutherford played last year when Nate McCollum got hurt. Nate McCollum transferred to North Carolina and to play with what's his name? Drake May.
Yeah.
And so Malik can handle that role, and Christian Leary and him will kind of trade off in that slot spot. So I think there's a lot of young talent. They have 2 young freshman receivers they're really excited about. Bailey Stockton's a walk-on, actually. That's Gunnar Stockton's brother. And then
really, there's the connection with Buster because Buster was the Lake Raven. Yeah. There you go.
And then the other one is Eric Singleton, who's like a track guy that can just fly.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of guys, but it's funny. I went back and like pulled literally, I think yesterday, maybe I was kind of discussing with someone on a message board, and it was like pulling the career receptions or whatever, and all of them are not at Georgia Tech. Like, even the tight end position's a lot different. So I think, no one I think really knows what to expect, and it's year one, and it's new coordinators, a tweak of the offense. To answer your question about Buster, what they're going to do is it's all about trying to get playmakers the ball in space. So a lot of the concepts are the same in terms of offense. Everyone's running the spread and running similar formations and things. It's more about how you create mismatches and getting the ball to your guys. And that's what Zach Pyron is. Zach Pyron's not a guy that's going to tuck it and run it 20 times a game. He's shifty, but he's not fast. Like neither is Haynes King. So like they're going to be more of a traditional offense with those 2 guys. And the one spot on the offense that is a little more consistent and should be improved is offensive line. So I think that sort of bodes well. They have a decent stable of running backs. So I think they have a chance. It's just going to come down to the receiver position. It's not been a real strength other than the slot guys, really, since Paul Johnson left.
Which is so weird to think about in retrospect. Is that the
triple option guy put all these guys in the NFL at wide receiver that are making a ton of money. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. You know what's sneaky? I really hope it will never happen. But if I was Northwestern, I would hire Paul Johnson yesterday.
You know what's weird is they've outlawed so much of the blocking now.
Yeah, because Monken's really not even doing it anymore in Army.
Yeah, Monken, Bohannon at Kennesaw State, they've had to really tweak what they do because they've outlawed all the cut blocking rules, and so that sort of negates. And that's part of, to be honest with you, is something that Paul Johnson and I discussed quite a bit in his later years. He was getting more and more frustrated as he had to keep redesigning what they were doing and blocking because of these rule changes for player safety. And at our level, watching it every week, I never really saw anyone get. The only guy I ever saw get seriously hurt was a dude who pulled himself into a cut block in the bowl game against Kentucky in 2016 on like New Year's Eve. This defensive lineman did something really stupid and like pulled a guy in to basically cut him, and they chop blocked him because when he pulled the guy, it created a chop block. He got hurt, and that was like his own doing, and it was inside, which is still legal. So, you know, I just never saw what they were talking about, and everyone was still doing it with their screens and everything else, and it was just kind of a weird fixation of some rules guys, but. Obviously, I think now, you know, I think maybe it's the Mike Leach offense. Is that your version of what the triple option is now? And if you're a team that cannot recruit enough talent to consistently win, or you don't feel like you can, is that the way you go?
Or that Jamie Chadwell, really, like what Jamie Chadwell's doing is probably
so. That's Jamie's offense is the evolution of it, right? Like
that was who I wanted Tech to hire.
You know, to me, like. It's interesting going back on it. Like if Paul Johnson left tomorrow, if he had just retired, that would have made a ton of sense, right? Like, when Paul retired, the guy actually wanted them to hire, which was ironic at the time, was Willie Fritz.
Yeah,
Fritz had experience doing that. He was a guy that was willing to go hire whatever kind of offensive coordinator. He was not married to any kind of offense.
Did he run it at Southern?
Yeah, so he ran the transition out of it. They started into the pistol, and they adapted from what they were running with him, and with I guess it was after Monken left to go to Army, and he was just a guy that had experience doing it. And if you were going to transition away, it made more sense to hire a guy that had successfully done that versus hiring, you know, a guy who's going to bring in an offensive coordinator who's not a P5 guy that was his buddy.
Yeah. Man, just the whole, like, there's all kinds of what ifs going down so many different college football.
I mean, what if they hire a real defensive coordinator? When Paul Johnson got hired, they cheaped out and hired the cheapest defensive coordinator they could find, and then fired him, and then hired the cheapest defensive coordinator they could find in Al Groh because he was getting an offset from Virginia, and that everyone thought that was a great move instead of hiring the guy that Paul wanted. And there's a ton of these like situations historically, especially with Georgia Tech, like, you know, like what if they do this? What if they do that? They did the same thing with men's basketball there. They had an opportunity to hire Jamie Dixon when Paul Hewitt got fired and chose Brian Gregory, who was getting run out of Dayton. Like, there's a lot of, and you can go through any school and find that in a lot of places. I mean, just obviously, you know, Tennessee has plenty of.
Well, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean, Kelly. Everything's been smooth sailing over here. I don't know what you mean, sir. We've had a bunch of normal head coaching. How many coaches
have they had since Fulmer?
Kiffin, Dooley, Butch, Pruitt, and now Heupel.
Yeah, so that was a long way to go around, and basically like what, 12 years or something like that.
Yeah, 09, 08. So what is that?
Something like that.
15. Yeah, so about 15.
Yeah, it took them that long to figure it out. I mean,
all right, this is not a roast for the Tennessee Volunteers.
No. I just find it funny because like all these people are always excited to see. Yeah, it's like they want to run a coach off or whatever.
Yeah.
One thing I kept telling everyone when people started to get a little weary of Coach Johnson and what he was doing, I was like, watch, like it could be 10 times worse. And they found the guy that literally did the worst possible job with it.
Yeah,
managing that transition and managing expectations and managing a roster. And then he had a perfect storm of stuff go wrong with the program. He had 2 kids die. I mean, it was literally like as bad as it could get. It was like they were cursed.
Mm-hmm.
And Brent Key's now going to try to spin out of it. It's the only way Brent Key could have become the head coach at Georgia Tech without going somewhere and being a head coach somewhere else before. So it's a super weird situation, and obviously you just never know. I mean, obviously, and we just talked about Fulmer, right? It worked out. He was in a weird situation where he took over as an interim coach, and
I think Lane would have worked out long term, but Lane took the one
Lane
job.
can't help himself. That's Lane's problem. Like Lane's always, I think, looking at the next move, and that's going to be.
I think he's mellowed out now. I think he's different. I think he's.
He wanted that Auburn job, I think, man.
I don't think so.
He got spooked.
I think he would have taken it. I don't know. Maybe he did. I don't know. I think he's chilling, man. His kids are growing up. I don't know. I think I don't know. I like Lane. I think Lane is.
He's a great offensive mind.
Yeah. What is we'll end here, okay. Kelly. When we look at recruiting, because like one of the things, obviously with Tennessee, like we're fighting for our lives to stay in the top 10 in the On3 cycle and 247 and Rivals and everywhere else. Where I refresh every day, where I'm looking and I'm keeping up, and like you and I were both in the weeds for different programs, but one of the things that is common is I'm looking at Tech and I'm like, oh, hey, they got a 4-star receiver. Hey, they're doing this. Hey, they're doing this, because I think a lot of people were wondering about like what Brent Key would do on the recruiting trail, how he would handle things. I like their staff. I like how they're going about it. I like who they're targeting and looking at their group. Do you think this is going to be a top 25 class once the 2024 cycle is complete? Where do you think that's a sustainable range, somewhere in that 15 to 25 in this modern NIL era for Tech? Or do you think this is just a slight bump? Like where is Tech going to be over the next couple of years in NIL with Brent Key and company?
So I think it just depends on how many kids they take. This is a cycle where they have a huge group of seniors, and then they have like 28 juniors, and like half of those kids are going to be kids that have graduated because of COVID or just have redshirted or whatever, and the ones who aren't playing are going to move along. Some are going to go to the NFL in that group too. So they're able to take a huge class this cycle. So that's changing it a little bit. I think it's between 20 and 35 should be the goal. And it should be, there's going to be some years where it's a little off balance because you're not going to take 20 guys. And so it's the formula or the average stars or however you want to look at it. And then also, how much they use the portal and trying to backfill a few spots here and there. So I think that's where that's the range you want to be in the combined rankings. If you can be in 20 to 35, I think you're in good company there. I think that puts you in the top half of the ACC and should have you competitive to go to Charlotte and play for championships on a semi-regular basis again.
As long as the ACC exists.
Yeah, from 2006 to 2016, they were pretty consistently either winning their division or in second place, right? And so the roadmap's there. It's been there through multiple coaches. So I think, then you get into what's going to happen with the ACC. I have my own theories about all this that are way different than what everyone else is saying, because I'm looking at the business side of everything and what's going on with the networks. And I kind of know some things that I've heard from people at work at certain 4-letter networks, and there's no money to expand, right? The SEC just stayed at 8 games because their television partners refused to pay more money for another game. And why are they going to pay for Clemson and Florida State when they already have Clemson and Florida State locked up in the ACC till 2036? There's zero incentive for ESPN to move that, and they lose inventory if they move that. You have all these teams tied into lower paying deals. If you had 4 ACC teams move to, say, the SEC or whatever, like North Carolina, Virginia, Clemson, Florida State, that's the difference in what they would have to pay them, and just bumping up the ACC a little bit is huge, right? Because you're talking about $400 million instead of paying maybe $250 million more over 4 or 5 years to an entire conference.
You know what I would do?
Way more games. What would you do?
I saw this, like, I guess it was a month or two ago while we were waiting for the Pac-12 to announce a TV deal. Because geography doesn't matter anymore, I would combine the Pac-12 and the ACC. If I
So
was
we've joked about that too. Yeah.
it would be great because it's not like you have to people like, oh, the travel. It's like, no, you can break it up where the one side of the country plays them, they play the other side of the country plays on that side, and then they just meet in the conference title game, and you maybe do one or two cross like country games. That solves so many problems for both schools and both conferences. The games would be great. The fans would enjoy that. I would do that yesterday. If I'm Jim Phillips, I am thinking big picture, and I'm like, that would be so much fun. I think the Big 12 is not going anywhere, and then we have like a Power 4. Like that would be awesome. I would do that today. That is my favorite expansion idea, is combining those two.
I mean, I would enjoy it. I enjoy going to the West Coast. I enjoy watching some of those teams. I like watching. It would be more interesting for me to watch those games, right, when you get home late at night, to sit and watch.
Tech,
I'm not
Washington State. I would love a weird Tech in Pullman on a Saturday night. That'd be fun.
Yeah, and then also like you would want to watch some of those games. Like I have no interest in watching, Cal and Utah. Like, am I going to really? I might put it on in the background while I'm doing other stuff on a Saturday night. But if it was an ACC game, I'd probably watch it. I mean, I watch SEC and ACC games all the time that I don't care that much about.
Yeah.
It would probably suck more people on the East Coast into it where football is a bigger deal. And if you can make the money work, that's what will make, as much as Clemson and Florida State and some of those teams would like to jump, it's all about money, right? And if they get a chance to be the kings of their thievedom in the ACC, they would be happy to stay if the money works. I don't think, and I think Texas will be the great litmus test for all of this. I grew up, my parents went to UT, the Texas, the
UT Austin, not UT.
Yes, UT Austin.
I didn't know what you meant by the UT because I only know one real UT, so you got to specify.
So my parents went to graduate school there, and my dad taught there, and I used to spend a lot of summers there. And so I followed that program for many years. They are in for the rudest of awakenings walking into the SEC. Like them in Oklahoma made a huge mistake, in my opinion. Like,
I think Oklahoma's in more of a rude awakening than Texas.
Oklahoma
tells me Oklahoma's going to get crushed early on. I don't think it's going to go well when they make the move.
I mean, even if Sark does a great job, you're still in that. They were not winning that league. The league was not that
This
great.
is it, by the way. This is a huge CFP year. Like, it's wide open. The Big 12 is on a silver platter for them. Like, they should be a CFP like contender in late November. Like, if they don't do it this year, they blew it. Because it's going to be insanely difficult next year and the next couple of years.
Yeah, and so you start looking at all that. Look at A&M. That's the roadmap, right? A&M was winning in the Big 12, and then they go to SEC, and they've had 2 good seasons, like in the SEC, and that's it. And they would have, with some of the teams they had, the team they had last year would have probably won pretty big in the Big 12. So, I'm fascinated by all this. I think that I hate that we've gone away from this. I wish the conferences would shrink down to what they were 20 years ago.
And it's just not happening.
But it's not going to happen because of the money. Not yet, anyways. I do think if TV trends and all that stuff continues to go the same way, we may see a contraction of things versus maybe even the Super League. Because again, no one wants to watch minor league sports. So if you turn into a Super League, I think you're defeating what makes college football so awesome. And, I mean, people want to watch, Tennessee fans want to play Vanderbilt. They want to play South Carolina. They don't want to play.
We want to play Vanderbilt. We don't really enjoy that.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want to play Vanderbilt when you lose to them, but.
I mean, you get fired. You lose to Vanderbilt, you get fired. But no one really goes into that game looking forward to it. It's like, oh, Vanderbilt could be bowl eligible. And Kirk Herbstreit giving that, it's like 56-0 on that Saturday night. It's just not. It's not a real thing. It's not a game we really look forward to. I can go
or Kentucky or whatever. Like all of those.
Yeah. Well,
those games start going away, man. Yeah. That's what kills it because that's what people love, man.
Yeah.
You don't want to go to College Station and watch them play or wherever. They don't care about that. There's no, going to Norman once would be cool. No one's going to want to go to Norman every other year if you're a Vol fan.
No. Kelly, this has been great. I appreciate you making the time tonight to talk all things Georgia Tech. Go check out jacketsonline.com. If you have not already done so, go join the rival site and keep up with Tech, who might be a top 25 team this year and might be fun. And there's Parpy legends galore and all kinds of Georgia connections. So it's gonna be good. Listen to my guy Joe Ham, Colin Gay. It's all good. The vibes are good at Georgia Tech right now. No music, but vibes are good. Kelly, thank you so much, and we'll have to do this again soon.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.